What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 392. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron
and John.
Guys, how are you both doing tonight?
Good. Energetic,
good, and still, I would say, still a little creepy. I know that Halloween was a few days ago.
Oh my God.
But I have a whole new thing I'm trying to start this year, and I'm actually going to be rolling out a bunch of podcasts on my FYIZ podcast feed. If you like me on this show and you don't know, I do other shows. Check out the feed, just called FYIZ. But I'm going to be doing something called Keep It Creepy in November, where I have a lot of creepy podcasts that I wanted to get out in October, but I was too busy to finish, and I've decided to turn it into a new movement. So hashtag Keep It Creepy.
I like that.
I think that there's a lot of folks who like horror all year round, and October is the one part of the year where we don't feel so strange. Everyone's kind of talking about it, and I always want to keep that feeling going, like kind of on through the holidays. I feel like Christmas is a creepy time too. Let's keep it going through December too, but right now just November. So I think this episode is going to be wall to wall creepy, but also I think we keep that fire alive on this show. We're always talking about whatever the latest horror thing.
Thanks to you guys. I feel like if it weren't for you two, I would never pick horror. I mean, not because I dislike it. It's just if someone gets gutted in the middle of a movie, I tend not to push it on anybody.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm starting to get soft on horror films.
They've worn you down, huh?
You've worn me down. If you listen to me in the beginning, I was just like, now I'm not spitting anymore. I'm not
spitting anymore.
That was
you're leaning in. You're like, interesting.
What's that?
Whatever that was going on with your saliva glands, you've addressed it.
Just
or it's taking care of itself. You just dried up in your old age.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What are we covering today? Because I feel like I've gone out on a limb and watched one of your required viewings, but I mean I always do. But this one,
I'm not sure what you're going with that, but we have one required viewing.
I don't think I've ever.
And I know you watched that one.
I don't think I've ever been affected by one quite like this one. That's why I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So let's do required viewing just as a little teaser for the episode. Like John said, we're trying to get as many other things creepy, spooky related in the shadow of Halloween, like John's movement. We're basically just jumping on that bandwagon of what he's got going on. So we're going to be talking about a couple other horror titles, spooky titles, creepy titles, in the podcast in general. We'll get to those in a minute. But yeah, at the top, as always, required viewing. My pick from last week was this year's most recent, theatrically, it was out like a month and a half or so ago. Came out on Shudder last week. I thought it was on demand in general, but I think it was Shudder. So if I misled you, hopefully you did some Googling and learned how to use the internet and found it yourselves. But it's on Shudder currently. But this is When Evil Lurks, which I don't know, the bubble that I think we're probably similar bubbles in the Twitter, the X world, which I refuse to call it X. I'm still calling it Twitter. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. That Twitterverse, the bubble that we live in, a lot of people that I follow had been commenting on this movie. There's this Argentinian horror film that came out not that long ago. And, especially people that I really kind of clue into or kind of okay, they really seem to like this movie, and that kind of registers with me. So it had kind of been floating around. I tried to catch it when it was in theaters. Timing just didn't work out, and it was only there at one of the ones I had, I could get to easily for a couple weeks. But yeah, I was happy that it came out on Shudder. I'm sure they're happy it came out on Shudder, just before Halloween. Hopefully it's doing well there. But yeah, When Evil Lurks. Had you guys heard of this movie? I can't remember if we kind of went through this last week, but just in general, had you awareness? Where were you on your awareness level prior to picking it last week?
Not an idea about this.
No registration. Got it.
No registration.
Okay. John?
I had it was on my radar a little bit for the reason that you mentioned, Steve. I just had heard people saying or read people saying this was good, and it was, maybe the fact that, and I don't know that I put it together until I was digging into it a little bit for this conversation. I don't know if I put it together that the director's previous film, Terrified, is a movie that I really loved, and I talked about on the show. I don't know if we ever talked about it as a segment, but I know that I saw it it was on Amazon or something. and I just looked at it, just looked like it was kind of creepy, and it was good to great in the same ways that I thought this movie was really effective, which is just there's a kind of honesty about how fucked up shit really gets when this kind of evil is unleashed and what's going on, and about the way that it takes over the situation. That is like there's a brutality to it that also almost has a kind of dark humor. I think in Terrified, maybe the characters, you get to know the characters a little bit more before things kind of go sideways. But it was a similar aesthetic, just I think I said to you guys after I watched this, When Evil Lurks, this is like elevated horror that is also going hard in the horror. Like it's hardcore horror, but it's also elevated. Like it's well shot and well acted, and it's artfully made. But it almost from the first 5 minutes, it's off and running with like imagery that's going to stick with you and disturb you. So I don't know. I found it to be really effective. But just to answer your question, I was excited when you picked this one because you kind of reminded me, oh yeah, that like I had sort of forgotten it was out there. And lately there's been this glut of things to watch. So I was really glad to have a reason to sit down and make a point of catching this. And yeah, if people like this, or if we make When Evil Lurks sound good in this segment, definitely check out Terrified. It's great as well. Ronald.
Yeah, you're right. There's like in general, there is a bit of a dark humor in certain scenes in the movie. I think overall, I think anybody walking away from the movie is like following you guys when you were texting me on Saturday, like having watched it finally. You watched it before I did actually. So, your responses were kind of in line with like everything I had read about it. But just like it's like one of those movies wherever you fall on it that like it does get a reaction, and it's like it earns a lot of the shocking moments in the movie because like the comment John said about like the evil or like the spirit or whatever it is that's in this movie and also in Terrified, like I think the way that it creeps into like the central characters' personal lives, but then you see its reach beyond them like immediately, like literally within like the first 20-30 minutes of the movie. Like I love that you get a sense that like you're going to see how it impacts the two leads that you meet at the beginning of the movie immediately, but then you also know that there's scope beyond those two characters that you're with. So no matter really what happens, with the leads, like what the resolution is for them and those around them directly, like there's probably still something happening outside of the story that we're following. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Like I love that idea of like it's so close to the two leads in the movie, and you see it affecting their family and friends, and the characters that they come across or that they seek out. You can almost like feel the backstory about like how it's already gone through that story with those people, and it's just meeting these guys. I love that, and the idea of like who else has it touched, or who else has been exposed, kind of those kinds of stories. Which in some studio things, putting on my Schmovie Studios hat, it's like that's prime for like a franchise. If this movie did well or is good, like is well received, like that setup is prime for that. And not that I want that to happen with this movie, but in general, I thought this movie was awesome. Yeah. And like I thought it was so well made, and I think that like just the way it looks, the way it's shot, the characters, like I just feel like this movie. It's only like, I was checking, it's like an hour and 35 hour 40 minutes or something like that.
It's lean.
It's so quick. And like, we always talk about that on this podcast, like, how efficient that stuff can be. And even with a movie, like you're saying, it's kind of a slow burn in ways, but like when it hits hard. Mm-hmm. Like that equation of it being a movie that's not that long, that manages to kind of have a foot in each area of like the shock and awe and some, just some creepy imagery. But kind of build real tension in and around those sequences is great. And honestly, like, I don't know if this makes me horrible. It probably, I don't know. Like, I love a horror movie, really any movie, but especially a horror movie that like no holds barred. Like kids are victim to it. Like it sucks to see and nobody likes it. But like, when you see kids pulling shit like they do in this movie, and especially like in some of the last scenes of the movie, with one of the child characters, I love that stuff, man. I love it when kids are not off off limits and like they can get torn to shreds and they can be a part of the destruction. I think that's awesome.
Well, I was even thinking earlier, there's a scene with a dog that is really like the way that it's framed and the way that it's shot. Your sense of dread, and you've seen this movie already go like so far with what it'll show. That's what I was going to ask you about, Ronald, was you were talking about kind of like gore and stuff, not necessarily being a thing that you go for.
Yeah.
But did you think this movie had a way of dealing with gore that was like, it was brutal? And because I was my son was asking me if he would like it. And I was like, well, he's seen some pretty extreme stuff, but I don't know if this would be too much for him. But then I thought about it. I was like, but it's so quick. It's like, it's literally a movie where you might like look away from the screen. You know how sometimes you might be eating chips, chips and dip when you're watching a movie. And if you like look away to dip your chip, you might miss a shot where 2 people die in an axe attack. And then look up. The movie doesn't linger on those moments, and it's part of the brutality we're talking about. But it's like it's got a couple moments that it stays on and makes you feel. But I'm just saying they don't make a point of like elongating those sequences. It's more like the suddenness of it and how quickly, oh, that person just killed that person, and oh, they just did that. It's so much quicker than I thought it was going to be. So it's brutal and it's awful, but it's also kind of merciful in the sense that like it lets you move on to the next thing because this movie is moving at such a clip. But once it's done that 2 or 3 times, now you really have no idea. Nobody feels safe. And that's where that little kid in the dog part, I was just feeling like I've seen too much bad shit happen already. I know this movie isn't going to shy away. How did you think this movie dealt with the gore? Did you think that did it in an almost tasteful way? I know it was hard to see, but you know what I'm saying?
I'm not, I'm not a storied horror fan, but there are 2 movies that I feel like are the grandfather of this movie. That's Man Bites Dog and 1992's Man Bites Dog, which is like one of my favorite movies. It's a found footage movie.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you much about it.
Or kind of a mockumentary almost.
Yeah, sort of mockumentary. And then the one that feels the most like its grandfather is Record, which came out in 2007, which kind of has its pace. Now, one thing I hate, we talked about this, the pet peeves, horror pet peeves is slow burns.
Right.
This does not have any slow burns. This is really, I mean, and you know what's cool about it? It kind of does in the same way. There's like a underlying story of like the root of this and following the root of it that feels like the slow burn part of it, but the action is very immediate. The relationships are very apparent. When I love how it starts off kind of slow when they go and they see this gore.
Yeah.
And then it feels like a video game. They kind of travel over to see what the root cause of it is. And then that's when it kind of picks up. Yeah. And then when you see like what it is and what it may be and the way that they talk about it. That's kind of the cool part about it. Like, and you have somebody from the beginning that kind of says like, man, we need to get rid of this immediately. Whatever this is, whatever this feels like, exterminate it. And then everybody's just kind of tiptoeing around it. And then it just gets crazier and crazier and crazy. I screamed a couple of times.
Yeah.
I found myself standing up and running around, which I don't do.
You're like, what's happening? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, like, that's what I mean about the suddenness of it. Sometimes you would almost be like, I'm going to have to watch that again because it looked like this character just got killed in this sudden way. It's like, you have to like process it almost. But I do think that way that you guys have both alluded to it, the way that it spreads, the way that like the evil spreads through like the community and kind of across the countryside, and they're ahead of it in some situations when they arrive, and they're behind it in other situations when they arrive. I just think it's a really interesting thing. And it's kind of like what you said, Steve, like there's really no hope of ever actually getting away from this evil once it's out. But it does feel like at the end of the movie, there's a kind of moment where our lead guy, what was the character's name?
Is it Pedro?
Yeah, Pedro. He's kind of got this moment of survival, but it's like a form of humiliation because he's spared in a way. In a moment where he doesn't feel that he should be spared, or that like he doesn't feel that is what's coming to him. And it's almost like leaving a guy like Pedro alive is a more brutal fate in a strange way than killing him in battle in a strange way. I mean, like there's just, you get a sense that he's kind of a broken man at the end. And then what happens with his son being, clearly still possessed or shaking off the possession. It's just, and it's gross. The thing in the throat. I don't know. I don't want to ruin every image in this just in case someone is thinking about watching it, but the arc of it is very, like almost like a mythic tale where a character goes from one place to another and has a different little encounter and adventure sort of along the way, and then at the end, you know, they've come to the end of this thing, but it's like the inverse of a heroic journey. It's like there is no heroism, there's nothing really to be excited about, but maybe there's some implication that whatever the evil is it's like we kind of know where it's going, and we know it's like it seems to be more of a tangible evil now, and less of like a evil spreading across the land. But who knows? I mean, it almost seems like this is the end of the world and we're just watching a small piece.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna say, like, your comment about like you know, like that moment of humiliation, it's also like a moment like it's almost like I don't know the right word, like it's almost like a flex on the demon's part, or the character, you know, that child demon's part, because it's like you don't know why really beyond to humiliate him until you see what happened to his son, you know, like and likely his mother, you know, like that's almost like the demon spared him not only to humiliate him in terms of his failure, or perceived success but failure in the end, but even more ultimate than that, there's a further failure, which is that to protect your mother and child, you know. And he gets back that, you know, that scene is just like, oh my God, that scene is brutal.
That makes me think, like, there's a thing that I thought about when I was watching this. Everything has a story to it. From the way that the police treat this gentleman in the beginning, like the way you were saying, like everything's kind of off screen. Like there's a backstory with this guy. You know what really hit me like a ton of bricks? The lady's house. When they go to her house, and it's like this story with one of the brothers, like there's like this
the other
whole,
brother,
like, this whole story that was like really interesting and handled in a cool way, and the other brother's kind of processing all the information. He's like, what happened? Like, it just, everything has a story. I fucking loved it. I loved it. Like, some of the other family, there's like a relationship there that they explain kind of in real time through some of the tense moments. Like everything was thought out. Somebody had a diagram and kind of mapped this out when they were writing it. And that's what feels so special about it, on top of just it being frantic and scary. And I love that it doesn't feel like, I love that there was no CGI or very little. Let's say maybe there was, but it was very little. Everything felt so tactile. Everything felt so like, like you could feel, you know, something that really fucked with me, you know, talking about scenes that lingered for too long. Man, towards the end, when they get to that room with, I'm not going to give anything away, but there's like a couple strikes that happen with the kids.
Oh, you're talking about the hammer.
Oh, come on. I was like,
well, that's an example of them lingering on
it
in a way, and it's like continuing to come back to it, and you're just like, oh shit, like they're not going to spare us this. Well, I think that the you know, the other point I wanted to mention about this movie that just struck me is because people were talking about whether exorcism stories or possession stories feel fresh or scary anymore in a world where maybe people aren't as typically scared of like the religious side of that. And I've always found possession stories to be potentially scary, just because to me the suggestion of some kind of like ancient entity, I don't care what the basis of it is, something taking over you and connecting you to some ancient power or ancient evil, there's something really creepy about that. And like, even if it's like, oh, maybe humans have put a name on it and we call it a demon, but it's something else that we don't understand. I've always liked the way evil just creeps into the world of those movies. Like in an Exorcist movie, there's weird stuff happening around the house, kind of when the possession starts. You know, it's like it's not just the person; it's local to them. But people were saying like, is that really scary? And does it work for you? And some people just don't find it scary. This movie to me is almost like an answer to that question of like, what's a fresh way to do a possession tale? This really is a possession tale through and through, but it does it in such a it's so propulsive and so different. And even just the form when they go to see the possessed, it's like, I think it's supposed to be a kid that's possessed, and it's been a year and a half or whatever they say that since it's been possessed. And it's like, it's mind blowing the form that the kid takes, and like it's it's a really unique vision of a story that you may think from our description, it may sound like, oh, you've seen something like this before, but
You have not.
I don't think you've seen it done quite this way, with as much respect for like keeping you riveted, but also that artful stuff of, you know, when we talk about slow burns in this movie, it's not really like a slow burn. It just means it's what you were saying. It's that 5-minute conversation where you get the sense of history, and you don't take it as like too much. You take it as like a welcome bit of context for why people are acting the way they are. But in the tradition of any good horror movies that have good characters, there's always a thing where you're like, yeah, these characters are good, but we all know why they're here. Right. They're here to get killed.
Just line them up.
Yeah. So it's like, as much as you might care, you recognize that what they're up against. And this movie is particularly bracing in the way that it deals with that idea that like, there's no beating this.
Yeah. Steve, kids got to get it too, man.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Or doesn't, you know what, it's not that kids should die. It's just that
they shouldn't have armor.
Everybody should be susceptible. Yes, everybody should be susceptible to it. And seeing
I'm not saying like in a movie where no kids are around, go find a kid to kill them.
Yeah, bring in a kid and behead them.
I'm like,
screen.
if that kid is in the line, like John said, there should not be a bubble, you know, like that just makes the stakes even greater, I think.
Yeah.
I would even venture to say that the kids got it worse.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything that equaled some of the brutality.
Yeah,
you know that last scene when they arrive to the place that has all the kids in it, and the one kid comes out and talks to him, and the other kid comes out and talks to him.
Yeah.
Things like that creep me the hell out, where it's like, if you were to talk to a kid and they were to say, you know, whatever, you should come on in or whatever. And then another kid were to come out screaming and crying like, no. But when a character is dealing with that question of just like, what is going on here? Like, I find that so, like, the hair stands up on the back of my neck when a scene like that really gets going, because it's just like, in life, you would be like, well, there's got to be, I mean, in life, there would be a different sort of explanation, but in a horror story, it's just wide open as to like what's happening in there. And especially when we know the kind of evil that's afoot in this story, you're just like, what have they done? What are those kids doing in there? And why is the one girl crying and the one guy like acting different? And I mean, it feels so manipulated by unseen forces, and yet you don't know what's going on. And it's, I mean, honestly, I look forward to whatever what is his name? Damien Runya. Damien Runya. But I also wanted to say this, from authors to movie makers, I think Argentinian people have a knack for horror. There's something they've got going on. I think that it's like, it's a politicized art form, and they're really good at sublimating it in their art statements and big moves and big swings. But I wish I had a list in front of me. I've read 2 or 3 Argentinian authors that write excellent horror and kind of genre stuff. So I don't know. I wonder if it's just like, maybe it's like a genre that is given a lot of respect in that country. I'd be interested to know, if there is something like that going on, because it's every now and then I'll look up where someone came from, and I'm like, oh wow, another Argentinian knows how to, and it's got the same kind of effect of this, of like really up to date, like really like this movie feels like it knows movies like that. This movie is definitely a movie from 2023 that knows what it's doing in 2023. It's not a throwback of any kind.
For sure. This is for sure. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the next month, but this is in my top 10. Like, it will be on my top 10. Like, I
think so.
Not even close. Like,
it's just a matter of where. Yeah,
it's just a matter of where. It was.
I mean, it could be 10. It could be 9. It could be 8.
Could be 8. Could be 7. Could be 6. Could be 5. Could be 4. Could be 3. Could be 2.
I like when somebody says something's in their top 7 or whatever, or top 9, because it means it's number 9. Well, they're one of my top 13 local comics.
Right. Yeah. Also, I'm 13, man.
Yeah. But this is what it definitely is. Wherever it falls on your top 10s, who knows that? But what we do know is on Shudder right now. And if this conversation, if you didn't watch it with us, and you still want to check it out, or if you've just coming along and just hearing about it now, definitely go sign up for a trial of Shudder if you don't have it already. It's a great service. And if you do, just go watch When Evil Lurks, because it's a recommend. John, you're up, I believe.
Yes.
You're going to go with our next required viewing, and what do you got for us?
Well, if we had not missed a week, this would be my pick would be playing this week, so it would definitely still be under the umbrella of like this keep it creepy vibe. So this is definitely a horror pick, and I had two choices that could have fallen on this date, and one of them would have been the oldest film we've talked about yet. But I thought maybe I'll keep that one a little bit longer. There's so many good films on my list that I want to talk about with you guys that I can't wait to watch them. But this is one that I saw when it came out in 1997, and I think that I was 24 at the time, so I was at the maximum, like, if I wanted to see a movie, probably having a picture in my head of what it was going to be, and then being disappointed if it wasn't the movie I was going to see. Like, I was at my most opinionated young film fan. So I don't know if I was brutal to this movie. I didn't like it that much when I saw it. But I did like certain things about it, and I really was looking forward to it. This is a movie that Jonathan Rosenbaum of the Chicago Reader said it was The Pits. Kenneth Turan of Los Angeles Times said the director shows a consistent desire to brutalize the audience. Bob Thomas of the Associated Press said the weary viewer wants to cry stop already.
Oh my God.
Scott Rosenberg from Salon.com said it's as if any glint of subtlety has been swallowed by a black hole. We will talk about whether this might be the best film by a bad director. This is the third film by Paul W.S. Anderson, 1997's Event Horizon.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Will be our next pick. I don't remember much about the way this movie felt to watch. I remember it had cool set design and a cool, creepy setup. And then I feel like it goes to all kinds of hell, maybe as a movie, but definitely literally. This movie has a 34% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I think there is also a fan it's been reclaimed somewhat.
Yeah, you know,
this was not a movie that critics liked, but it's got a great cast, or at least it's got some real noteworthy people in it. Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, Jason Isaacs. So I don't know. I have a feeling this will be a fun, watchable movie, even if it's not great. But I'm willing to believe it's probably better than I remember it being, or at least I would like it more now than I would have then. But I also expect it to feel extremely 1997 with its approach to like editing and music and gore and stuff. So yeah, we're gonna watch Event Horizon for Movie Schmovie.
Where can we watch Event Horizon? Let's check that so we can let our
Deep space, my friend. You have to look into deep space.
You watch it in deep space. Okay, so it's on. You can rent it.
And streams on Fubo TV. I don't know if you guys ever used that.
No.
Fubo.tv. Event Horizon is streaming on there now. I don't know if it's a free service or not, or you could just get it digitally.
Yeah.
Like a rental. I see it's on.
It might be on Hulu. Is it on Hulu?
It looks like it's on Paramount Plus. It's hard to say whether it's through those places that they have some subscription to some other service, but it's listed on a bunch of places. So yeah.
Event Horizon. Cool.
I guess cool.
I mean, you know what I'm looking for.
What?
It has been remastered fairly recently.
Okay.
This is like one of those ones that a smaller like physical media place would remaster and put out. This is kind of like the sort of Scream Factory sort of release. Like it's that sort of lane. This is like ideal for their sort of audience. So yeah,
cool.
Event Horizon.
There we go. Event Horizon next week.
Cool.
Let's I guess when you guys want to talk about the big breakout horror hit of the season.
Yes.
The Blumhouse, in the wake of the Exorcist Believer, I guess bombing is a good word.
Yeah.
Blumhouse takes a movie that they have coming out day and date in theaters and on Peacock and says, hey, make this our biggest release opening weekend ever. And then you get Five Nights at Freddy's. And and
you're gonna get at least five Nights at Freddy's now.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, they make these, Blumhouse has their formula. They make these movies for nothing. I mean, I don't know what the budget was on this. If anybody's looked it up, it's under 20 million max. They adjusted the opening weekend grosses. It was $80 million opening weekend.
Budget 20 million is listed on Wikipedia.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I think it was like another 30 or 40 worldwide. I mean, international. So it's like 130 and change opening weekend.
152 million is what it says.
52.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I gotta say, like, I have a little bit of awareness of this franchise or this title. mainly through my nephew, who is I've seen him playing the game. He's talked about the game. That's literally the extent of my. I can recognize the characters. When I see him just from some of the stuff he's had in life, in passing. But beyond knowing that it has anything that like something similar to a Chuck E. Cheese or like that kind of look to it, I don't know anything about the lore of the game or anything like that. So I kind of went into this watching this pretty blind. I was actually looking forward to watching it only because it's not only is it spooky season and I like to watch as much as I can, but it kind of gave me a vibe, and we can talk about how it lands with the three of us in a moment. But like watching the trailer, or even like my nephew's his like excitement around it, talking to me before years ago, and even now, like it feels very much like a great gateway horror kind of thing. Which I always felt it was, and like my nephew does like horror stuff. My brother and his wife have like kind of shown him some stuff over the years that kind
of. I would expect you to probably like disconnect from your family if they weren't.
Yeah, I mean that it's a requirement.
Yeah,
it's a requirement. But yeah, I don't know. Just like that was my read on it, and even from the trailer, it kind of felt like that, knowing that they were getting the PG-13 rating and trying to keep it, I guess to get that audience that they know generationally is looking for this movie. And like based on the demos from the box office, like that's one of the biggest things I've been hearing is that like the audience breakdown of like under 24 or something like that. I forget the box, maybe under 25. Like the breakdown of the demo is like through the roof. Like for this movie, I think it's one of the highest percentage movies in that demo, even more or even on par with like other box office hits that were like cartoons, geared towards kids, obviously. But I don't know, which is a reassuring thing. I mean, obviously we always talk about how horror is like a reliable and tried and true box office thing. Still, people go to the movies for a communal experience with horror. So it's cool that there's a movie out there that teens, kids, whatever they're going to see, and hopefully it is kind of like a gateway, regardless of what you think of the movie itself. But like even just that it's an offering for a property that is really one of the bigger game to screen transitions that we've seen, even more recent, even more than like Sonic recently. It was like another big one that like made that jump, and it's a bigger opening than Sonic. So it's a huge success. What did you guys? I don't know. We need to talk about the box office enough, but or we don't need to talk about that a lot. I guess we can get into talk about the movie, but I guess were you aware of it a bit, Ronald? I guess because you're much more in tune.
Yeah.
Gaming world,
more of a game guy. Yeah,
for sure. I remember when it came around like 2013, 2014. I remember its presence. I remember people constantly talking about it. It's not really my bag video game wise. Like I'm not really like a horror survival game unless it has to be incredible. It has to be The Last of Us, one of those types of games. But yeah, it's always been present. It's one of those games that was like heavily pushed on Xbox because that was kind of like this PC Xbox sort of thing. PC gamers typically went to Xbox. That was kind of like the gradual thing, and that was one of the games that kind of hooked people. But personal excitement, zero excitement about this movie. I had no expectations, but man, Blumhouse is that the new movie? Is this the new thing that's happening in the next couple of years? It was superheroes for the last like 10 or so, or video game adaptations. There's so many in the pipeline. Like I feel like a lot that people don't know. I mean, I've kind of mentioned like Gangs of London being one that nobody knew was a video game, and you listen to the podcast and you found out that it was.
Well, the Mario movie was a huge hit too. You got to believe that has to do with being the accessibility of games, the rampant, just how ubiquitous games are for people. I mean, I had no association with this movie either, except for some of the stuff you said, Steve. Like I kind of knew. what I remember was talk of making a movie out of the game Five Nights at Freddy's. Like that started a long time ago. I do remember that. Like there was chatter, and so I would read announcements about that, and I would always there was always it felt like some overlap between like gaming aficionados and some of the movie people that I wrote, the like the press that I read, and so there would be a lot of excitement about certain video games being adapted in the right way or whatever. But so outside of knowing this was a project that a lot of people were trying to get off the ground for a while, I sort of had like just the recognition of the characters that you're mentioning, Steve. And then recently when there was that, was it like Showbiz Pizza, Rockafire Explosion? There was something else that was a similar kind of idea that got made into a movie. And so I didn't know, this blurred with that in my mind. So I had zero, like investment in any of the lore of the game. I kept thinking like, throughout this movie, I kept thinking like, oh, I'm definitely missing Easter eggs left and right, like moments. Right. And the one thing I was able to appreciate about it, though, was there were scenes where the main character, Mike Schmidt, played by Josh Hutcherson, is like walking around in the dark with a flashlight. And it felt very survival video gamey to me, just the way that it was filmed. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that they've been able to evoke that feeling, that exact feeling of shining a flashlight around in a video game in one of those games and I'm to understand that's what Five Nights at Freddy's is. You're going around in a dark place and the sounds are kind of guiding you. I know that because one of my students in audio production this year wrote an essay about the immersive sound design of Five Nights at Freddy's. So
really,
yes,
that's really cool.
But I mean, so I was watching this movie going, oh, I can kind of see what they were talking about with, even though this is not the game, they were talking about the game, but like the way that you're in the dark and sounds are kind of leading you through. And yeah, I was able to kind of see all the things you said, Steve. Feels like gateway horror, feels like this is one of those occasions where I almost feel like I'm going to like step aside with all the magnanimity that I can muster and say, this is not for me. Like this movie is for people that love the game. Magnanimity? How do you say that word? I'm being magnanimous.
There you go.
This is for the people that love the game and people that are maybe of an age where they've grown up with this game. I'm not saying that as a way to knock it. I'm just saying that so much of it was lost on me because of that. I did think it was reasonably well made. I will say that like the way when those animatronic characters started finally moving around and doing something, I wanted to cheer just because it was like 40 minutes into the movie. They really take a lot longer, I think, than they needed to like sell you on why this guy's working there and what's going on in his life. I feel like you could have been like second scene, he's got that job, and you wouldn't question it. I know they were going for a little bit more of like a slow burn, but for some reason, like this does not feel like the movie to me to do the slow burn. And the other thing is when the characters are walking around finally, I knew it was not for me when I was like, okay, if I grew up loving this game, I would probably think it was so cool to finally see, oh, creepy fox guy come around the corner. But otherwise, it felt so slow. It felt like they were treating it like it was watching the first dinosaur that you saw in Jurassic Park from a distance. They were treating it like, oh, you're going to be blown away when you see these characters just kind of come out around the and the pacing felt really off to me because of that.
Yeah.
And the people that know this probably were blown away by it.
No, I'm sure.
Like having talked to a few, like, I would say like that's what felt the most odd to me watching this is that I feel like it's one of the I don't know. I feel like it's one of the first times, even of other like game to video to film adaptations. Like I'm not familiar with the one that comes to mind is like Uncharted. That was like a modest success, even when it finally came out. And I don't really have any association to that. But I guess maybe this one hits me more because it's horror, where like I feel like, man, like how do I have no connection to this, and I feel weird that like I'm not, like you said, John, like I'm not getting these things, or I have no I don't know if expectation is the right word, but I have no like.
Yeah, there is a word.
God, yeah.
It's not quite I have no bandwidth or I have no headspace or I have no, it's not like I don't have a place in my heart, but there is something that's like I don't have the anticipation
it's just like for me, it's just like the connection. It's not even the headspace or the bandwidth, whatever that word is. I'm thinking more so like it felt weird watching this to me to admit to myself,
right?
Like that I'm at an age where there's a property that's been baked for the last 10 years with a different generation in a gaming console that is now a hit horror movie, and it will be a franchise. and I have nothing connected to it as a person who loves movies and horror. That like I didn't even connect with the game in any way besides like knowing about it through my nephew. That was like a realization that I had watching it.
But you shouldn't feel weird about it because it wasn't good enough. The thing is, like, I know.
Here's the thing, though. Like, I say all that, and I thought the movie was fine.
Oh,
like I'm probably I'm the most positive here, I'm sure, based off of our text thread and like my read on what you guys are got going here. But like, is it good? Like, maybe barely. But like, I watched this movie and I was like, okay, for that person or that generation or the fans, I'm like, they're fucking probably eating this shit up.
Yeah.
Like, it got an A- cinema score for a horror movie.
And it's just gory enough, not gory, but it's just like hardcore enough with the kills that happen, even though you don't really see anything, that I do think it flatters the idea that it's not it's not like safe corporate product or something like that, even though it kind of is in its own way. I will say this, after reading the Marvel book and kind of coming to think about what Kevin Feige represents, and I know that you've been a Blumhouse fan all along, Steve, and I have too, intermittently. I admire what they do. I love that model of don't spend more than 15 or 20 million and make a kind of movie that always makes more than that unless you really fuck up. And then you'll have hit after hit and like make it PG-13 so that kids can go see it on Friday night. Yeah. So this movie was day and date and still made all that money in the theater. I mean, that tells you something else about the energy people have for going to see a movie like this in the theater, as opposed to some of the other movies that haven't had the performance. I mean, if a movie like this literally does more than, I mean, it's hard to believe that this movie could really outperform a Marvel movie coming in a few weeks. In terms of opening weekend box office. But I don't know that this was projected. Maybe people are just going to see movies more, and we'll see a lot of movies hit a higher mark than they've been projected for. But I guess my point is just, this does feel like kind of a next wave thing. And Jason Blum, my wife and I watched Shark Tank as one of our garbage television shows, and they had a Halloween special recently, and Jason Blum was one of the billionaires. Oh, nice. And it was interesting how, like, I don't really care about, executive producers and producers. They're not like the people I follow. But when you put them in a room with like those other assholes, he's suddenly the most interesting billionaire in the world compared to these other people. But the stuff he talked about with building up his company, it's like his success story really got me. Like, I was like, you know what? God, that's really fucking cool. And as a fan of horror, even if his brand is not necessarily my exact jam, he's made some stuff that I've loved, or his imprint has been on some things I've loved. And I love that he's been in that horror space, and that even now that he's making big hits, he still sort of operates in that space. I'm a big fan of somebody that sticks with the genre that brought him to fame. I don't know. That always just appeals to me, like, as far as like a brand or whatever. So I don't know. I will say that I find this movie almost more interesting as a success for Blumhouse and what it means for them than I do as someone who could be invested in the movie. Because maybe I liked it a little bit more than Ronald, but I don't think I would say by much. I think what I more appreciated about it was just the effort that was made. The very thing that kind of put me off, which was like how seriously they were taking it, I also kind of appreciated that they tried to make like a real movie out of this shit. It just didn't work for me because I'm not one of those kids. But maybe if I was someone who has some reference for this material, maybe I would really appreciate that that this movie feels kind of carefully made with how it treats the property. So I don't know. What do you guys think of Matthew Lillard?
Matthew Lillard. Yeah, what a fucking. I mean, I guess I'll color me stupid, man. The twist in the end, I was like, holy no. Color me stupid. I was like, oh no. You know what I mean? Like, it really had a.
What color is that, Ronald?
I think it's like a pinkish grayish color.
It sounds kind of sluggish.
Yeah, just kind of like a sluggish sort of.
I always love Matthew Lillard, man.
I like seeing him pop up, even if he can be kind of over the top. I love seeing him pop up for some reason.
And that's honestly what I love about him. Like, I feel like he's kind of like, when he's in there, he's like that utility player that it's just like you pop him in and it's just like, oh yeah. He's gonna be that kind of character.
Am I crazy, or was he kind of restrained in this?
Yes.
I mean, up until like the last 2 seconds or last 2 minutes, maybe, of his character, he was pretty like, he was doing a more straight-laced performance than we see from him usually. Yes. But I thought it was interesting that he got to be like unmasked in that way. Like it was a throwback to another moment we think of with him. So
yes, and I also like seeing Mary Stuart Masterson in it. Like, you know, she's not the most interesting character, but I saw her and I was like, wow, she looks exactly the same.
Okay, I'll say that was one of the ways the movie being kind of a PG-13 horror, it was a miss for me. She was, from the moment she popped up on screen, she was one of those horror movie characters who should get like a good death, like
a good one, yeah.
And she didn't. Like,
no,
yeah.
Like, I mean, in so much, I thought it was kind of funny the way they handled it, but it felt very much like if I was that performer, I'd be sitting there going like, what? I don't even get to play the moment where something happens to me. I just, you know, it all happens off screen. But no, I agree with you. Seeing her, it's weird for me to see people like her and be like, oh yeah, that is her. Like, she definitely looks like herself. It's just, it's not that she looks that different. It's that I haven't looked at her in years. Right. And so seeing her again makes you realize, oh yeah, that's what Mary Stuart Masterson looks like.
She still got it.
Yeah.
She still got it.
Yeah, makes it look great. We should have probably picked Some Kind of Wonderful as the next movie.
Guys, I love that movie so much. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, I was way more positive on it than I thought I would be. And maybe it's because, again, like I said, I had no connection, I had no expectation, I had no dog in the fight. Like I didn't care about this movie really that much at all. Except, like John said, like I kind of was rooting for it because of Blumhouse. And honestly, recently, the Exorcist underperformance and, like, you know, kind of what scuttlebutt comes out of that. Like, I don't know where that goes, but you know, this is the kind of movie that I could be like, yeah, this gets put on like a cold rainy night, you know, especially this time of year. It's like, yeah, I could watch it with my teenager or my young kid.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, this is a no-brainer, you know. And my daughter's maybe a little too young for it, but like, I know my nephew and my brother are eating this movie up, you know, like on Peacock. Like, I know they're loving this. That have probably watched it multiple times already. So it's like, that is a very positive thing in my eyes. So but yeah, again, that's in theaters now. #1 movie in America. We'll see if it holds on to it for 2 weeks in a row. And it's also on Peacock if you'd rather just stay home and watch it.
Yeah.
What else? Anything? Oh, John, you said maybe to mention the Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah.
Did you finish that yet, Ronald? How far did you get into it?
The Raven. I think I'm on the Raven.
Oh, that's the last one.
That's the last one. Yeah.
I'm like close to finishing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so you got an idea of the shape of the
thing. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's Mike Flanagan. We should say, like, this is his 4th or 5th, depending on, I guess we should say 5th. His 5th.
You should Towson Tiger, Mike Flanagan.
Well, I now teach at Towson University in the electronic media department. So I'm wondering, like, can I parlay this into some kind of, like, you know, he'll come to some alumni thing and I can come, you know, be really annoying. He'll come up with a new creepy character called the Stalker Professor. But it'll have a better name than that. We're just workshopping. But no, I think that, so this is the 5th series he's done for Netflix. Mike Flanagan, horror director who has made some horror films that people like. A guy who has a real eye for character. At this point, we can say he likes, like, long monologues. He likes giving characters a chance to kind of tell their story. And yeah, this is the most recent one. This is the last one for Netflix, I suppose, because his relationship with them has ended. He's moved on.
It is.
So I don't know that this might be the last series we see him do, but this format, which started with Haunting of Hill House and continued with Haunting of Bly Manor, and then continued through Midnight Mass, and then there was the Midnight Club, which was sort of a young adult thing, but I'm thinking I might watch that one just because I'm hungry for more Flanagan. And then this new one, which is Fall of the House of Usher. He has at different times taken different authors and sort of adapted sort of their work or done something in the flavor of their work. Fall of the House of Usher is full of references to Poe's work, from the episode titles to the fates of a lot of the characters. It's never a 1-to-1 ratio, but it's always, if you know Poe's stories, it was very fun watching how the references popped up. Right. And how sometimes there would be, like, feints where, like, you would think an episode was going to refer to a different character going through something from one of the stories, and then it would come in a different form. And if you started to see the shape of the thing, the little jingling sound that you were hearing early in the show, if you know your Poe, you know that's going to be crucial. So yes, you do get Cask of Amontillado, but I don't know. Flanagan, I love him. I love Midnight Mass. I felt like if there was a drawback to that, it was very, very heavy with the long monologues. And as much as I loved it,
what's the problem with the monologues? Why does everybody bring that up?
For me, it's because when it's too long, it feels like it's an indulgence. Like it feels like it feels like for instance, I felt like some of the monologues in Midnight Mass were too long. I haven't felt that way about any of his other things. And I felt like the Fall of the House of Usher had like the best use of that like craft, where you would get a character gives a great speech in the like he's got this knack for a monologue, and it's like particularly the moment when I guess he's is he a detective or an investigative reporter, or the guy who's doing the Carl Lumbly plays him in the.
He's like a attorney general or deputy attorney general.
But when he's in a young man and he's in their apartment and he's telling them like, I can see from your lifestyle that you don't have a lot of money, and that's probably why you're not telling the truth about your employer. You know, that speech was so good. It was like a perfect example of Mike Flanagan's gift for writing monologues, but like not too long, didn't feel like the camera was pulling it on someone's face for 6 minutes while they tell a long story. It was just perfect. I mean, I felt like there was so much about this that was like, this might be, I think my favorite might always be The Haunting of Hill House. But this felt like in some ways it might be better just because it's so clever and so full of those types of things. And I do think it did move at a nice brisk clip. Like each episode had its own kind of horror story to tell. And I was impressed at how it kept it going. Yeah, Steve, I know you like Flanagan stuff. How do you rank this one amongst the others? And do you know what I mean about this one feeling like, and also I will say with the addition of a strong humor streak that was not always as present in his other ones. This was a very, very funny show.
This one was very funny. And you know, it's just, you know, the benefit of these kinds of shows that he makes is that like he kind of gets you get to indulge in this great ensemble. And I mean, I think the cast in this, you know, he has his Flanagan verse or whatever they call it, you know, like he's got these actors and actresses that
Henry Thomas
are everywhere.
Henry Thomas having, like, for me, a career second act entirely because of Mike Flanagan, as far as I could tell.
Right, you know? Right. And, you know, and some new faces as well that are going to continue to work forward with him.
How good is Bruce Greenwood in this?
In the movies? Oh, he's great. So good. And like I was saying on our text thread, like it's kind of crazy to think that was that was all like reshot, or for the most part, all was like reshot stuff.
Like at least half the season was shot
when what's his name?
Frank Langella.
Langella, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, remember that they had that he was in that role, and then you know there was an incident, and he was removed from the production, and then Bruce Greenwood came in.
This was that show? I thought it was something total. I thought this was like the Amazon stuff that he. Holy shit!
But yeah, I don't know. The standout thing for me is always like, you know, I love the ensemble performance, you know, the cast that he, you know, sticks with and that stick with him. They're all just such great actors and actresses. The performances are wonderful. You know, standouts for me for sure. I mean, especially in this, because there's more time with her, with Carla Gugino. You know, I'm a huge fan of hers. I think she's incredible and very underrated as an actress of that generation for sure. But she's just amazing in this as Verna. But I, you know, yes, Mike Flanagan is the surefire thing for me. I mean, we talk about this horror conversation, you know, the names that come up of like, you know, we are so dependent and that are so dependable. Sorry. You know, like him and I don't know, Jordan Peele and I don't know who else comes to mind for you guys. If you just kind of be like, yeah, you're always in, or you've liked or loved most of their stuff. You know, his name is probably at the top of my list, mainly because of just like the batting average, you know, whether, you know, whether it was Hush or whether it was Gerald's Game or Doctor Sleep, which was incredible.
Yeah.
Or all these Netflix series that John mentioned, you know, and going forward, you know, knowing that he's got another Stephen King adaptation, a feature film with a lot of the cast members of this movie, and Matthew Lillard as well from Five Nights at Freddy's is going to be in that, called The Life of Chuck. I don't know what else I can say about Mike Flanagan that we haven't already said on this podcast, but specifically with the show, I really just love the tone of this show. You know, yes, it was very kind of spooky and scary, and it has some great jump scares in it. But yeah, John kind of mentioned it already, and it's the key to me is like, it has so much humor and levity and like awkward situations to break tension, to, you know, make you go further into disliking or liking a character, you know, to kind of broaden that spectrum and push you to one side or the other. And I just loved all that stuff, you know. And again, you know, the casting is great, but like there's just some mood, you know, to his shows, to his series. And I don't know, I feel like Hill House will probably be like, maybe just because it was like the first, um, will probably be the top. But I mean, this is definitely the top three. I personally
Yeah.
love Midnight Mass.
Oh, I love it too.
I love
Yeah,
Midnight
I feel
Mass.
like this might be like, you know, this will probably be the 2-3 for me, depending on how I'm feeling and, you know, the kind of thing I'm looking for. But yeah, you know, the way that this kind of, you know, took a lot of these Poe stories and kind of found creative ways to slot them into telling the story of the rise and fall of this family and this character. Um, it's just great. And, you know, and I love, you know, little behind the scenes things. Like I love seeing, you know, his DP directing a lot of the episodes, you know, which he did some, I think, on the Midnight Club as well. But, you know, I think the last 2 or 3 episodes were directed by him, and I think the rest were by Flanagan. So it's cool to see like that hand, you know, that just that vibe that this guy is like giving me, you know, that he keeps this tight knit thing, and he's like, oh yeah, you've shot all my stuff. Do some of the, you know, you're gonna direct some of these episodes, like, you know, I love that, and I like the Midnight Club. I still enjoyed it. It's definitely at the, you know, I would say if you're going to say lesser of them, you know, but it's still enjoyable for sure. And you know, you get to see a lot of the actors that are in this, actors and actresses that are in this and that as well. But yeah, I mean, the timing couldn't be more perfect at the time of year. But yeah, this is like, yeah, this is one of the better shows I've seen this year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of enjoyability, and again, something that, you know, my wife watched with me, and it's like that you just can't wait to watch the next episode kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, that's a no brainer for me. Flanagan is like, yeah, I don't know, he's probably number one for me honestly right now. Like as I'm talking,
Yeah.
like in, I mean, even in horror, but I'm saying in general, like everything he puts out, I just would like, yep, number one in line. I'm there.
Well, you just at this point you trust him,
Yeah,
and
that's it. That's
he
all it is.
delivers that thing. It's like when you like a musician and you put on their album and you hear their voice and you're like, hell yeah! And then
Right.
they did it again. You know, it's like he's got a flavor maybe, but it's not the same thing again and again. It's just he brings it around to the type of things that are the same are the things you like to see, like the same actors working together and bouncing off each other in different ways. And this one in particular, everyone gets to play a much more. You were talking about how you might find these characters likable or not. This is a great show where you might like these characters that none of them are likable, but you
Yeah,
might
yeah.
find one of them or another of them more sympathetic or more relatable or whatever. And it's very funny. Particularly, I thought the way that as far as like who turns out to actually be the worst of the kids turns out to be
Yeah.
not the one who you might have thought was the
Thought it was.
softest
Right.
at the
Right.
beginning or the most likable at the beginning. I think that was a really good thing that developed into this idea that like, and the death that's given to that person is more epic and crazy than the deaths that are given to some of the other people, which they're all kind of epic and crazy. So it's like,
Yes.
it's one of those things where you can totally see why people keep showing up to do Mike Flanagan's stuff. Like
Yeah.
he gives them great stuff to chew on as actors, and this one seems like it must have been fun. I mean, some of that fun we're feeling must have been what they were trying to convey. And yeah, just one more note about the Bruce Greenwood thing. I mean, it is crazy to think, not with how integral he is to the thing. It's crazy to think that like I don't even know how you do it as a crew, as a director, as the other actor, how you keep the energy level up to go back in and do something again.
Yeah.
Maybe you find it actually I will do it better somehow this way, but in general it seems like it would be so hard to keep quality control up, and you would start to think like, what are we doing if you were back, you know, months later in, you know, doing the same thing, same shot with a different actor. But Bruce Greenwood carries this show in some really key ways. I swear he's one of those actors who's better for me every time I see
Yeah,
him.
he's great. He's great. With where you're at, Ronald, like how are you feeling? Like it gets in the, you know, the other Flanagan series or movies that you've seen, or just this show in general?
I mean, I don't talk about it I think he's incredible. I think that what he brings, I mean, look, I don't like Netflix. I've kind of voiced this a million times, but I
You've been
think
back
that,
and forth on Netflix. I guess you're back to
yeah,
not liking them.
yeah. I mean, it's generally trash, but I think that
I
what
don't even know
Mike,
what you mean.
it's so bad. It's so bad all the time. But the shining light is like what Mike Flanagan brings to it. I think that like I think that there's like to the point where like Netflix has its own quality of show, its own quality of movie that people have kind of accepted as okay.
Yeah.
But Mike Flanagan elevates it. It's why he stands out so much. He tells incredible stories. He tells, you know, long lasting things. Like I feel like I always hear people talk about Mike Flanagan the way that like people talk about Stranger Things when it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I hear people talk about Mike Flanagan 12 months a year. You know, like he's become synonymous with quality forever. You know, and the cool part is when that announcement happened with Amazon, it's not like anybody was like, oh no. They were like, oh, he's just gonna take that same quality and take it to Amazon. And that's just a stamp of what he brings to the table. I was impressed. I am impressed with it. I just have to finish it. And I think that he is one of the better directors in the past 20, 30 years. My favorite, Park Chan-wook, but I mean, Park Chan-wook is like, if you ever hear Mike Flanagan talk, he cites him as because he is the person. He is the person that everybody mimics. I mean, and not to be weird, but like he's the blueprint. And then you have Mike Flanagan. If this is what he takes from directors like that, like this is just the beginning of what we've seen from him. Like, what are we gonna see in like 2 years, 3 years from Mike Flanagan? Like, this is
4 years.
4 years. What? 5 years. 10 years.
No, I think what's interesting there is a style, and there is a thing he does, and so you can see him honing it and kind of getting better with it.
He's so good,
and so I kind of agree. Like, I wonder, in the same way that I wonder what Jordan Peele's going to be up to, I wonder what Mike Flanagan's going to be up to. In the same way, almost like to that level of like, you know, I guess like there's lots of directors that have become like directors we've championed on this show, like Denis Villeneuve is one.
Mm-hmm. I
mean, like I was just going to say, but you would put him in that list of people who like, there is something rewarding about looking back over the years we've been mentioning his name. It's not like this has all been over like four quick years or anything. It's like we've been talking about this guy for 7-8 years at this point and saying like, oh no, this is something worthwhile. This is something different. And he's keeping that quality control up and moving forward, it seems. So I'm super excited about whatever he does now, especially like if he gets the right elements together for a movie. If he has like a movie that has the same level of like fun and kind of nasty horror sort of fun that like that Usher had, I would love to see that, because as much as Dr. Sleep is a great movie, I also think it fits into what we might expect from him, which is the sort of somber, sort of slow-paced, character-driven thing. It's fun to see him branch out and do that within the context of something a little bit more kind of nasty and fun. So,
well, he's got The Life of Chuck coming up next. I think that's filming in Alabama.
Oh, cool.
With an amazing cast beyond, Mark Hamill, Matthew Lillard, Tom Hiddleston, I think, is a star of it, but that's based on a short, Stephen King short. And then he's also got The Season of Passage after that, which is based on a Christopher Pike novel, which is like a sci-fi horror.
Okay.
But and then whatever he's going to do at Amazon, like Intrepid, his production house with Trevor, is, I don't know what that is going to look like at Amazon, but I mean, he's got a lot going on, and that's cool too, that like, the next thing he's got is like a big movie, with big stars, and and still a lot of the same cast that we've seen in everything else that he does. So, I mean, like, that transition is really cool to see, and can't wait for this one to come out, because this looks awesome. This is like I'm not familiar with the short story, but it's apparently more similar to like something like Stand By Me, at least from what I've read. It says it's about a man dying from a brain tumor in reverse order. But it's from the same book of shorts, or the same book that was it Mr. Harrigan's Phone was in, which was a Netflix movie last year. But not so great. But I mean,
it's cool that Mark Hamill is now in that group.
I love it. He's great. He's great in Usher too.
He was so fun to watch in Usher, and his character. I love the way if we want to view Verna as this kind of demonic tempter character, I love his interaction with her. I love that he's like, because of his role and what he does, that his role is like, they almost have like an understanding. I don't know. I thought it was a really cool moment where he basically says like, cool, like, I like your offer, but I'll take the consequences that are actually coming to me. And I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting an interesting moment. Because at that point you knew the formula of like when she meets somebody, what's going to happen, and I thought it was cool to see them deviate from the formula a little bit. But I just like seeing Mark Hamill have fun like that. You can tell he was having fun doing a voice, and
yeah, for sure.
You know, he likes to act.
Awesome.
All right.
And I'm happy to see it still in the top 10 on Netflix, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I do think
it's been out for a few weeks, and it's you know, his series always do have that hanging around, you know, power in that.
Well, it's this time of year too. It's perfect
for
time of year.
Sure. Great timing.
I mean, but is it like this to me is an argument for, I love the binge of this. You mentioned Stranger Things, Ronald. That's the other show where I'm like, I'm pro binge. My family,
I cannot wait.
My family, like we pull the curtains, we turn down the lights, we get a lot of snacks, we watch 2 or 3. We have that. You want to watch another one before bed, and then we'll get up and we'll watch more. You know, like I like when that happens. We don't do that often, but the Mike Flanagan shows, like we all sort of agree. Even right now with my son, like he won't even speak to us 2 words in a day sometimes if he doesn't have to. But when this was out, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna watch that, you know, that thing. Okay, yeah. Are we gonna watch another one? I don't know." It's just like it's the perfect. It's, to me, this is like an argument for the binge. Even though what you just said, Steve, I wonder what would happen if people did have a week to ponder and a week to talk about it and a week to sit in it. I don't know if these shows are quite at that profile yet. But I do know that when I see my Facebook feed, when one of his new things comes out, it's like there's a smattering over a period of a couple weeks of people realizing it's out, and then people realizing it's by the people that did the other thing. I think people have clued into those things that we like. And even if they don't know the name Mike Flanagan, they know this is like a company of actors and writers that make something that they like, and they'll come back for it, you know? So I do agree. I hope he can carry that over to Amazon and kind of do the same thing, just under a different roof.
I hope so. So that's on Netflix right now. You guys want to mention anything else? I don't think we have anything else big planned for this episode, do we? Or we're going to go through some other stuff that we've seen.
I mean, there's other things we could talk about, but I could hold off. I feel like that's a show.
Let's hold off. Yeah, that feels good. Is there anything else you guys have seen that you want to mention or say, hey, watch this, or no, don't?
Decision to Leave.
Oh yeah.
Oh okay. Yeah.
Mubi, a streaming service that does, like, their claim to fame is that they have like a daily.
Well, what was that thing you just held up? It was like a movie, but it was like a
It was like in the real world.
It was like a picture of a movie on, what is that, like a case or something?
And then a bootleg
with like a plastic. What is that like?
Yeah.
So you got like a little representation of the movie that you like to have at home, like a physical representation of it. Oh, yeah, cool.
I've kind of become a grouchy physical media collector, because, you know, you have to know that these things aren't going to be anywhere forever. You know, if Mike Flanagan's like, I don't want my stuff on Netflix anymore, then it won't be on Netflix anymore.
You can only get it on, like, I'm going door to door.
Yeah.
And like, and like duping VHSs like for people.
Yeah. It's happened before. It'll happen again. So it's good to have some physical copies of stuff. And Mubi streaming.
I still don't know what you mean by that physical copy. We'll have to talk about it some other time.
Yeah. It's a little hard to.
You kids are into so many wild things, though.
We'll do this off. We'll do it off mic.
Off mic. So Mubi's a streaming service that presents a movie a day from all around the world, and they're getting it. They've always distributed movies, but they're getting into physical media, particularly 4Ks recently. This is the first of them. This movie is gorgeous. Park Chan-wook. This is, you know, it's my number one for last year.
Yeah, I was about to say, wasn't that your number one for the year?
Yeah, man. This has an Atmos track that is so immersive for just a movie that it's not an action movie. It's just a crazy love story / thriller that I think that anybody should really see. It's really good storytelling, especially if you like Mike Flanagan style stuff. Park Chan-wook is kind of in that, like, scary, making things that shouldn't be scary very scary, and then kind of subverting expectations. Just a really good storyteller. And I love this movie.
Well, no, I think that you're right. Like, his movies are, I mean, it's an interesting comparison with Flanagan, but there's a thing of, like, it's gonna really work for you on some genre level, like with a Park Chan-wook film, but it's also gonna have like a genuine drama, like a genuinely engrossing human drama of some sort coursing through it, and it's almost unnecessary. Like, you almost don't need that in your genre thing.
Yeah, but he'll do it.
But it's great. Like, it's instantly engaging. Like, those are movies when people tell you to watch them and you watch them and you go, you know what I mean? You get hooked in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No, I think that's great. I kind of want to watch that one again. I enjoyed it, but I was watching so many movies around the time we did our
man,
best of the year. I don't even remember if I watched it before or after you mentioned it, but I feel like I didn't get to watch it in time for the show. But then I watched it shortly after that, and I did love it. But I haven't seen it more than once, and I kind of think I should sit down and watch it, and not as part of a flurry.
Right. I'm gonna give it another watch probably this weekend. So I'm pretty excited about it. Have you guys watched anything else, or not really? Or?
I don't think so, really. I think that's I need to watch some things. I need to watch the season finale, or the season finale of Gen V. I need to watch Invincible season 2.
Oh,
I need to watch Monarch. I need to watch a lot of stuff that's coming up that I'm sure we'll talk about on this podcast soon. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't watched that I need to. But yeah, no, I think that's good. This feels good. And yeah, that's an episode, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, moviesmovie.com is the website. You can go there to subscribe to the podcast on the podcast platform of your choice, or you could just listen right on the site. Maybe if you're listening at work or something, you could just keep the browser open. YouTube.com/moviesmoviepod if you want the video option. And then next week's episode is going to have a required viewing choice of Event Horizon from 1997, which we said, it's available digitally and maybe on some of the streamers. Like, you get like Showtime through this or Paramount through that. Do a little Googling, find that thing if you want to, or just rent it for a couple bucks on any of the digital platforms. Or maybe you have, I don't know, some people might also have physical media that Ronald held up at home, or know someone who has that thing that maybe they could play, or they have a player for. I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't want to assume, but there's a chance that may be the case. But regardless, we'll see you next week. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.